Like our lives, like history, like all things in nature, the church year goes through cycles and seasons, and again, we find ourselves coming back to the same prayers and stories and readings. But as time passes, we often find something new in those familiar passages, as the circumstances of our lives change. There are some stories that we love to hear over and over. Our readings on Sundays most often come from the Revised Common Lectionary, which is a 3-year calendar of readings followed by many churches around the world, across languages and denominations. For most of the year, there is a reading from the Hebrew Bible, a reading from Psalms, a gospel reading, and a reading from another part of the New Testament. Some churches include all 4 readings in their Sunday services. We usually pick 2 and frame the service around them. Most passages only come up once in each 3-year cycle, though some passages are read once a year, such as the Christmas story. Today's passage, however, comes through the lectionary not once per 3-year cycle, not twice, not even annually. It comes up a whopping 6 times per cycle, and is part of the reason why the 4th Sunday of the Easter season is known as Good Shepherd Sunday. Our second reading this morning is the 23rd Psalm. Hear now the word of the Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. The Lord makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. You restore my soul, O Lord, and guide me along right pathways for your name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Lord Jesus Christ, our Good Shepherd, you give us new birth in the waters of baptism. You anoint us with oil, and you nourish us at your table with heavenly food. In your goodness and mercy, dispel the shadows of evil and death, and lead us along safe paths, that we may rest securely in you and dwell in the house of the Lord now and forever, for your name's sake. Amen. So, I thought I'd preach from the perspective of a sheep again, as one does. The members of our flock come in all shapes and sizes, but we're a good lot. My mother named me Maple, like maple syrup, because she hoped I'd be sweet, and I am a proud great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Lance Corporal Darby the 30th. I know, but it's okay, you don't have to salute. Since my Aunt Mary had her little baby lamb this past spring, Tweedle, there's been 100 of us. But sometimes I think the shepherd counts us as 99 because Tweedle follows Mary so close and is so scared of everything around him that sometimes he tries to hide underneath his mom. It hasn't worked so well since his last growth spurt, though. We sheep don't exactly have the longest of legs, you know? But everywhere that my Aunt Mary goes, Tweedle is right there beside her. We're good sheep, and our shepherd always wants to spend time with us. We're funny, and we're smart, and we throw great parties, and sometimes some of us younger sheep would stay up all night talking, but then that old party pooper Methuselina would march over and say, "Excuse me, but it is past your bedtime, and some of us are trying to sleep here." Killjoy. We always have such a wonderful time together, though. We always share the clover and all the best herbs and forbs, and when it's cold, we all huddle up together to keep warm. Every now and then, the shepherd will bring a new sheep to join us, and I happen to think that we are very welcoming. It shouldn't be our fault that they don't always want to do the things that we've always done, but they keep each other company, so it's fine. I mean, we always manage to have a great time, but if they're too good for us, well, that's their problem. They'll realize they need us someday. It's a great life being a sheep. You would not believe the fun we had last fall when Rambo had his bar mitzvah. Even old Whitebeard joined in the singing and dancing, and despite not being able to communicate with us, I'm pretty sure the shepherd was toasting Rambo too, although she missed most of the party when she fell asleep with her pillow over her head. We're a family, us sheep. And if I do say so myself, we are the best family around. I mean, there's a herd of sheep a couple hills over, and I just can't even believe the way they act. They're always covered in mud, and they just ignore their little ones because they're too, well, anyway. I'm just glad I'm not one of them. You can't trust those kinds of sheep. But I guess not everyone can be like us. Anyway, let me tell you the story of Doug, the weird sheep. My older sister Dolly always tells me that I shouldn't call sheep weird. Whatever, Dolly. She is such a nag. It's like she's a clone of our mother, I swear. Anyway, Doug's mother was one of the sheep who was brought in from a different flock, and I'm not saying that we didn't include him, but he did spend a lot of time on his own, looking lost in thought. Who did he think he was? A philosopher? For goat's sake, Doug, we're sheep. One afternoon, the skies started to turn darker, and the shepherd started to gather us together and herd us back to shelter before it rained. And boy, what rain! I'd never seen anything like it. It rained, and the winds blew, and in between strikes of lightning, I saw the shepherd trying to count us. She got to 99, and then came over to my Aunt Mary and me, but Tweedle was standing on his own for once. The shepherd bent down to make sure there were no other little lambs trying to hide between an older sheep's legs, but I saw the look on the shepherd's face when she realized that there were, in fact, only 99 sheep, and one of us was missing. The littlest ones, who had never seen a storm at all before, started crying, and we all drew together in a huddle, even the sheep from the other flocks, and everyone started talking at once. With so much going on, no one saw the shepherd leave. It took some time to account for everyone, but eventually we figured out who was missing, and we all groaned. Of course it was Doug. Go darn it, Doug. Every time there's a sheep left behind, it's you. Why couldn't he just be like us? And now the shepherd had gone and left the rest of us all alone in this storm. I mean, sure, we had each other, and we'd been brought to shelter, and the shepherd had left both of her dogs with us to keep an eye out for predators, and we had a fire going in the pit that the shepherd had made, but what were we supposed to do? The storm beat on, and as afternoon turned to evening, some of us tried to make the best of the situation and tried to get some sleep, but worry kept me awake. Was it our fault that Doug always kept to himself? No, of course it wasn't. We never told him he couldn't hang out with us. He could have come over if he'd wanted to. When we got new sheep, we always told them that everyone was welcome to eat with us, and Doug should have figured out that we meant him too. But we'd never made space for him in the circle. No, he could have asked us to let us in. He could have asked. I hope he never heard us making fun of him, calling him a bug and a lug and a slug and a shrug, that weird sheep, Doug. But we only ever talked about him when he wasn't there, so that couldn't have been it. And sure, his mother was kind of an outsider still. She'd only been with our flock for 8 years. But his father was one of ours, so it's not like he was born an outsider, you know? What were we supposed to do? Form a committee to find out how to make a sheep feel welcome every time the shepherd brought in someone new? Wear name tags until they learned all of our names? Who has time for that? All for the benefit of 1 or 2 new sheep each summer? But still, something at the back of my mind wouldn't let me fall asleep, even as the rain slowed down and the stars began to shine. I think I was the only one awake to see the shepherd approach on the horizon before the dog started barking to announce her arrival. In the very, very early morning light, I saw the shepherd carrying Doug over her shoulders. The shepherd looked exhausted. Of course, she'd clearly been up all night searching for Doug in the rain and the dark. Her braid was dripping water still, and now that they were closer, I thought Doug looked like he'd been crying. The shepherd laid Doug down near the fire so they could both warm up, and the weird sheep let out a cry of pain. His leg was broken. She made soothing noises, or maybe she spoke to him, but if humans can talk, we sheep can't understand them. She took a sturdy stick and tore a strip of muddy fabric off of the bottom of her robe, binding up Doug's leg and scratching behind his ear, then brought him a handful of grass and forbs and waited until he'd eaten his fill before she slumped, exhausted, against her pack and pulled out some bread and dried fish for herself. And she had done all of that for the weird sheep. Was he really worth that much? As the weeks went on and Doug's leg was still healing, he couldn't have joined our circle of conversation even if he'd wanted to. But as I wondered more and more about why the shepherd had risked her own life to rescue Doug and bring him back to the flock, I quietly suggested to the others that maybe we should bring the circle to him. It took some time for him to open up to us. Maybe he was worried we were only being nice because we felt sorry for him. Maybe we were. But the flock rallied around him, and eventually he realized that we weren't going to leave him. I mean, the shepherd clearly thought he was valuable and important, after all. He told us about the night of the storm, how he had wandered off and didn't hear the shepherd or her dogs calling us together. All of us vowed to ourselves that in the future we would be extra careful to pay attention to the shepherd and to stay close to her. Doug told us, his voice full of awe, about how patiently the shepherd had pulled him out of the mud and carried him back. Wow. The shepherd was like a superhero. The littlest lambs especially declared that they wanted to be just like her when they grew up. After all, if a human could be that heroic, how hard could it be for a sheep? They began to talk about who they could rescue. It didn't rain hard again that season, though, so there was no one to pull out of the mud, and the dogs kept the wolves away. Tweedle especially began to wail that he'd never get to be a hero if there was no one to rescue. That spring, we said goodbye to Methuselina and Whitebeard, who died of old age, and to Strawberry, who didn't survive giving birth to her little lamb, Snuggle. When Doug was able to walk comfortably again, we started making room for him in the circle, without even thinking about it. One day in the summer, the shepherd brought 2 new sheep to join our numbers. As the shepherd sat down for her midday meal, the new sheep stood awkwardly in the field, shy around so many new faces. But then Tweedle, who had grown by now, jogged over to them to introduce himself and to show them the best spots for grasses. At first we didn't understand, but then we realized Tweedle was being a hero by rescuing these two lonely, scared sheep and welcoming them into the fold and headbutting us into a bigger circle when we forgot to make room for them. After all, if even that weird sheep, Doug, was precious in the eyes of the shepherd, maybe all of us were. Maybe even these new sheep, too. Maybe it was time to look at every sheep as being precious and treat each sheep with respect. Maybe it was time we learned to really welcome new sheep into the flock and not just introduce ourselves once and then ignore them. Maybe it was time to do a better job of looking out for each other so that we would never lose another sheep again.